and helping us to keep our industry and our community abreast of new developments, future possibilities, and how these will affect our profession moving forward. So each of our sponsors, we have Goscor, Harmonic Group, Universal Storage, Stabalode, and EIE Industrial Equipment. So if you can all give them a high five and thank them for their support. I would like to ask each of them to give me a quick elevator pitch if they'd like to do it. So I'm going to ask Goscor. Who is here from Goscor that wants to just say a few quick words? No?
Hi, no, sorry. Hi, it's Ronald Ryan from Goscor Lift Truck Company.
Hello, Ronald.
Yes, thank you very much for allowing us to participate in this and be one of the sponsors. I'm sure we're quite synonymous with the warehousing industry, and we're very fortunate to be part of this presentation. I've got quite a few of my sales team around the table because we always like to be part of the innovation and understanding what the plans are for the future. It's pointless us being stagnant, and I think this country is in a good space to be going forward with warehousing and new technologies. So yes, thanks once again.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Harmonic Group. Nobody? Okay, we can come back to you. Universal Storage. I did see Jan here somewhere. No? Okay. Stabalode. Who's here from Stabalode that would like to say a few words? Everybody camera shy. Okay. EIE Industrial Equipment. Anybody here that wants to say a few words? Okay. Maybe we will come back to you at the end so you can say a few words, but we'd like to really give a big shout out to our sponsors, and we really are grateful for their support. And yes, it's about staying ahead of technologies. And I think I do agree we are in a good space, and it's much needed at the moment with the e-commerce. It's changing the landscape of where we're going with distribution warehousing centers. There's a lot more need for it, I think, than ever has been the case before. So enough of me, I've said enough. Martin, please, will you take it away and share your enormous amount of expertise with us? And thank you.
No, and thanks. So guys, yeah, thanks a million. Please, yeah, keep silent, but if somebody really has something urgent that they're just dying to say, you won't bother me too much if you blurt it out. Or ask. I know you'll send through some questions as we go along, but I get carried away with these things and probably won't even look at them until we have a break. And we'll have a break after about an hour and do some questions, and then at the end, some questions as well. So we're going to talk today, whoops, if I can, about the changing face of warehousing, and it certainly is changing. The world is changing, and warehousing is changing along with it. And it's going to be an interesting discussion on how fast it's going to change, and is it going to change? Have things changed? Yeah, forklifts still, okay, they don't quite look like this, but they still do the same thing. They still dominate our industry. So we'll talk about it. So what's driving change? Let's talk about globalization for sure. SKU explosion for sure. And we'll talk lots about that. A new philosophy is I want it now, not tomorrow, not next week, I want it today. E-commerce, explosion of data, all this data we have, automation, we'll talk lots about, some centralization, some new management techniques, example, AI, is the market more competitive? I think it is. Lots more bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is an evil that grows continuously. And then we'll talk a little bit in South Africa about labor issues, political, not too much, theft, and the fact that our ports don't work so good and our railways don't work so well and our economy is far away. And we look back, 1964, that's a shot of Bob Dylan. That's him today, by the way. He's changed a bit since 1964. He said the times they are changing, and I guess they started changing, but they're changing a lot faster now. And one thing we're going to talk about continuously is this. It's not the strongest that survives, nor the most intelligent. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. And I think that's what this whole presentation is all about, is how we adapt to change. And some people didn't. Agvs, South Africa, Kodak, Toys R Us, Blockbuster, Compaq closed down, JC Penney, Duesenberg, who made the best cars in the world, South African Airways, on Mondays they're closing, Tuesdays they're on, but they may or may not be around. DeLorean, who made one of the nicest cars in the world. Palm Pilot, there's a modern thing that some guy invented and they also closed. So yeah, even when you adapt, sometimes you die. And for the supply chain, I think the real, we talked about dysfunctional supply chains in silos, and then we talked about getting the silos to work well. Then we talked about integration. This is all the academic shit that we talk. Better collaboration. And where we're moving is on-demand supply chain. Again, I want it now. So we always talk about these silos, sales, marketing, financial, and most companies I deal with still running quite rigid silos. And we talk about trying to blend these silos. We talk about demolishing silos, but I don't think we're very successful in demolishing them. We try, but somehow they keep standing up. Maybe all we do is just make the silos look pretty rather than trying to integrate them. And that, I think, is where most companies are today, making each silo look a little bit better than it looked before. Perhaps one of the big changes coming at us is this whole philosophy of I want it now. I don't want it tomorrow. If you look at Amazon, what percent that they're pushing up to 50% same day delivery. Our on time in full expectations have changed as well. Hey, we used to live with 50, 60%. We now want more. We want it right now. Fashions are changing. What type of fashions we look at. And our customers are changing. Original customers we had is a completely different type of person. So we're facing lots of nice challenges. World is changing. And let's just talk about the effect of this SKU explosion. There was a time when you went to the shop and you bought peanut butter, there was one type. There was Black Cat peanut butter, and that's all you got. Then they added a crunchy one, and then a sugar-free one. And now you can get cashew nut butter and almond nut butter and another 400 things. And certainly that does make life complicated. Amazon, looking at 12 million SKUs on their list. That's a lot, eh? 12 million SKUs. Okay, they don't keep them all in stock. Some they buy out, but 12 million SKUs. And how do they give everybody what they want on time? I want it now. Is by decentralizing. They're highly, highly decentralized. Just in the States, over 100 warehouses. So that's the only way they can feed their customers in our want it now environment. A whole different philosophy. Most of our philosophies for the last 20 years have been centralized, centralized, centralized. Well, they look highly decentralized operation with lots of SKUs. And e-commerce is growing nicely, bigger and bigger. And in South Africa, it's still only below 10% for some companies, below 5% probably across the whole industry, but it is growing quite fast. And a lot of guys are doing really amazing jobs. It was quite interesting. I ordered from ShopRite the 6060 the other day, and I ordered quite a big order. It was quite a lot of stuff. 32 minutes from the time that I placed the order, it arrived at my house. I think that's amazing. That's beyond amazing. To get it to my house from their store in 32 minutes. COVID has certainly changed the way we do some business, we do quite a lot of work for couriers, and gee, they are pumping most of the couriers. Their volumes have gone through the roof. So that environment has changed. Other changes like click and collect. I see Woolworths are quite big in that now, where you can pre-order and go and collect. You show them the order and they throw it in your boot. I'm going to talk quite a bit about some new techniques, mainly about machine learning and artificial intelligence, because I think that's going to be one of the big changes we're going to see in the next few years, especially in the forecasting industry. And what on earth do we do with the so-called big data? So I will talk about that. Hopefully it's still about the customer, on time, in full, good quality, good admin, safe, value, respect. One of the ones I think that we leave out a lot is respect. You know, do we have respect for our customers? Do we offer them value and so on? Okay, that's enough waffle. Let's go inside the shiny new warehouse. Let's go look inside warehouses and see where we're going. So what's new? Bigger, higher, faster, maybe. And we'll talk about all of those. More SKUs, we've mentioned. A lot more automation coming. Better systems to drive workers. Better WMSs. Better interfaces. Better storage, better picking, and some more energy efficient stuff. And we'll talk about each of these. The more SKUs is interesting, because what does it mean? More space, for sure. Poor space utilization. When you've got so many SKUs, you may not have full pallets of them all. More pick slots, big problem. A lot of the warehouses we've built over the years just don't have enough picking slots. Got enough storage slots, but not enough picking slots. More people, for sure. Poor truck utilization. You're now sticking more and more SKUs into the truck. A lot more checking, a lot more difficulty in inventory control, and packing becomes a lot more difficult. Whether you put in a roll tin or in a cardboard box, much more difficult. And this paradox of choice, I wonder if the world won't reverse itself, but it seems to be just exploding, where you go into shops, you just have no idea what you're going to buy because there's just so much. And then the want it now, more equals more channels to the customer, more decentralized. I was chatting to somebody the other day about their e-commerce strategy and saying, hey, listen, local stores will do local customers, will do I want it now. Central warehouse will do I want it tomorrow. And purchase from somebody else is, hey, I want it in maybe 14 days' time. And they're going to have to all offer all of those options. So more channels to customers, more decentralization. And I'll debate with you less or more automation, because in some ways, e-commerce is less automation. More labor, for sure. Less efficient transport. Sending one box at a time ain't efficient. Better management systems. Trying to say, hey, I've got this in stock at my local store. I've got this in stock at a central warehouse. I can get this from a supplier who may or may not have it in stock. Suddenly your inventory management systems and your management systems in general get a lot more complicated. And then higher stock levels, for sure. Faster everything, yep, got to pick faster, pack faster, send it out faster. And as I said, delivering one at a time is a costly operation. There's not a lot of money in sending your stuff by courier. Are we going to get there faster? So far, hasn't really happened other than a couple of medical issues in Africa. Will drones start taking over? Or are we going to go even faster than that? There's Jeff Bezos and his rocket ships that he's working on. Add some local warehouse labor issues, and we all know we're sitting on a time bomb with 40% plus unemployment in South Africa. We don't like to talk about it too much, but we want more control over our labor. You know, it's quite interesting. I was in the States a little while ago, and they were saying, yeah, they like to make their labor permanent because they work much harder when they're permanent. And in South Africa, I would imagine 80% of the people say they want less permanent because the temps work harder. So it's an interesting parallel. More outsourcing, less outsourcing, better procedures, for sure more rules and bureaucracy. It just grows. More, less theft. And our labor costs still comparatively low compared to, say, Europe and so on. I mean, there's places in Europe like Finland where they're paying 60,000 euros a year cost of a person in labor. So, yeah, we're still cheap. And I just added, the easiest management tool for labor is no labor, just automate everything. So we're going to talk about going higher, going lower in e-commerce, going faster, more automation, better control, better equipment for the job, and less constraints. So going higher, yeah, turret trucks, 17 meters. There's a couple of guys who make them at 18 meters lift. So 20 meters, 21 meters is not uncommon for a modern building. Getting the floor flat's a different ballgame, but they're going higher and higher. When I started in this business, 12.5 meters was standard for a turret truck. Today, 16.5 is standard, but there are guys who make them 17 and 18 meters high. So that's certainly going up. Reach trucks, 13 meters, not uncommon. And there's one or two suppliers who are now in the 14 meter mark. So we need to build our buildings at 16 meters, at least, maybe 17. Certainly if reach trucks are going to be at 14 meters. The big problem with a 14 meter lift reach truck is you need a flat floor, and a lot of us don't have the flat floors. But if we can get the floors right, I predict that within 5 years, every reach truck supplier will be doing a 14 meter lift. And there's no real limit on automated warehouses. We've got one in South Africa we did for Sasol that's 40 meters. But they're now saying 50 meters is not uncommon. So I guess if you run out of space, you can do almost anything. Hopefully we won't get so high that we all start talking different languages. Those of you who read the Bible anyhow, that's meant to be a picture of the Tower of Babel. But in e-commerce, we actually want lower warehouses. If you look at most of Amazon warehouses, they're one floor, one level high. They like to rent facilities that are 4 meters high, where they can do picking simply and easily, like this. There's a typical Amazon picking operation. Yes, there are some Amazon picking operations with multi-tier floors. So you can get that, lift the height and things, but multi-tier floors have got lots and lots of complexity. You end up picking half your order on one level and half the order on another level, and then you've got to combine the orders. So it's not a simple solution, multi-tier floors. But do we go back to traditional technology? There's some, in the beverage industry, still 99%. Same old technology, but maybe not. These are automated guided vehicles for the beverage industry. and a lot of benefits of using them. Firstly, you take out your labor. You get everything in the position, you know where you put it. A lot of the guys are going 4 levels high because they can get these pallets exactly on top of each other. And the costs are not that high anymore. I met with some guys who make these AGVs, not this model, but yes, in Germany, and they said to me they predicted that in another 5 years, an AGV will be cheaper than a forklift. It's just simpler. There's nothing to it. No place for, no cab, no drivers, no steering. So maybe they're right. There's an AGV block stacking, easy to control, it's flexible, simple, easy to implement. These things find their own way anywhere in the warehouse. Don't need guide paths anymore. They got lasers on their roof. That laser on its roof. Hang on, I think I can. Oh, well, don't worry. You can see my cursor. That laser on the roof finds its way. So you just teach it where it is, and it'll do whatever you want it to do. Or do we go back to simple manual where we pick up lots of pallets at the same time? But the AGV could also pick up lots of pallets. Here's one handling 3 pallets at a time. So is manual faster? Is it just all about manual systems? Is it all about giving this person who's running this lift truck more access, faster, voice control, all of those type of things? To pick faster, pick better, carrying 3, looks like 3 rolltainers, maybe 4 rolltainers at once. Here's an interesting one, carrying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rolltainers at once. Does that give you more efficiency rather than going automated? Here's a really interesting one. We've been looking at it for a customer. This order picker has lights underneath, so when you get to your location and you scan it, it says put it in that in red, put it in green, put it in blue. Here's another one where it's got the, I don't know what color that is, yellow, red and blue location, or put to spot. Quite a nice system when you're picking, because you're trying to pick to as many pallets or rolltainers as possible. But your problem is if you want to pick multi-orders on one lift truck, the poor guys put it in the wrong location. So here's a way to stop them putting it in the wrong location. So full case picking, there's lots of traditional options. Lots of simple full case picking techniques. Is it all just about giving them voice enhancement so they can pick faster, or scanning? Must have always take voice first, then scanning. It's a lot faster, it's a lot easier to implement, gives you hands-free, although you can get hands-free scanning, we'll talk about that. But maybe full case picking is something different altogether. Maybe what we have is an automated warehouse that brings things out to the picker, puts it in a line, and you can pick outside the warehouse. Is that not a better way of doing it? The big problem with all these automated systems like this is flexibility. Just imagine you have to design this automated system. Do you design it for the average year, or do you design it for peak season? If you don't design it for peak season, when peak season comes around, you ain't going to get your throughput. If you do design it for peak season, you suddenly can't get the throughput if you don't design it for peak. Is the simplest way to transport to a picker an automated guided vehicle? And they come in almost every shape you can imagine. It's a very, very interesting picking arrangement. I don't know if any of you have seen it. Here, what we do is we take a pallet on this machine and we run past these rolltainers and we strip the pallet into the rolltainer. So all we've done is mechanized this guy's operation, and we do it for the A volume product. The B and C volume products you pick conventionally, but you can pick your A volume product quite fast and quickly with a machine that just helps the guy pick. One of the nicest sites I've seen anywhere in the world was a company called TJ Morris in UK. And what they do is they run these rolltainers through a tunnel, multi-level because they can't get the number of pick faces. And this guy stays in his zone. This carrier moves the rolltainers through his zone, and that's what the carrier looks like. 2 rolltainers on the carrier, a place here for an empty pallet, and that place there is for waste, and a screen which tells him what to do. This thing goes along, it stops in the right spot, and it shines a light on the product, and it says, take 2 of those. He puts it in the rolltainer, and it could be a pallet, doesn't have to be a rolltainer. Puts it on its way, and off it goes. So we're saying more control equals more efficiency. So maybe it's manual. How about this? It's such a simple system. She has 15 bins that she can pick to. So she can pick 15 orders at the same time. How much more efficient is that than sending somebody to pick 1 order? So is it just about designing better trolleys? These trolleys have got put to light. So the lights come on, you scan, and this thing lights up and says, put 5 into me. So can we get stuff to make humans work faster? Sure. Voice, we can scan, we can wear glasses, and we can have all sorts of track and trace. Here's a pick to light, whereby the light comes on, says pick 4, light comes on, says pick 2. We run these, for example, at MTN and Vodacom, where you don't have a huge range of products, maybe 1,000 SKUs, because the lights become quite expensive if you've got 5,000 SKUs. Voice picking, as I said, much more efficient, works well, simple, highly efficient. And is the future all about glasses? Are we going to put glasses on everybody and they're going to live in a virtual reality world? Mark the path they must take, mark the product they must take, tell them how it's, and probably we saw a fast growth and then we've seen it slow down a bit, but I'm sure it'll come back at us. So really what we're talking about is an augmented reality, whereby this thing will actually take us to the place and do the picking, help the humans do the picking. Just now I'll do some stuff where the humans all disappear. Pick walls work really well. We've put in a couple of pick walls and they really do work well. So what you do is you put literally a wall with all these lights here. This guy comes along, picks 100 Toy Story things. He scans and it says, put it there. Scan, put. So you can pick 20 or 30 orders all at once, put them into the slot, and away you go. For e-commerce, it's one of the nicest systems around. You because you can pick for so many orders at once. And then once this is full and everything's here, the light will go red on this side, and on the other side of the pick wall, the light will go green. And then the guy knows I can take that out and pack it. So it's very simple, very cost effective, not expensive. And I'll talk just now about pick walls and packing, because one of the nicest things is a pick wall, and on the other side of the pick wall, we put some sort of bagging machine so that we can pack quickly as well. Of course, if we can bring the goods to person, we can pick a lot faster, typically about 8 times faster. So if we can bring stuff to a person, we can save we need 1 out of 8 people to do the same job. So we can bring the goods here, pick, and send the goods back. Notice I said goods to person. I had to change all my slides. My wife said to me, you're not allowed to say goods to man anymore. So I have changed them to goods to person. And lots of options with goods to person. There's Codex system here that brings this good to the picker in this vertical storage unit. 101 varieties of these units. And I guess the most well-known goods to picker is Amazon system with Kiva. So these robots were invented by a company called Kiva, and Amazon liked it and bought Kiva, and they bring the shelves to the picker. Notice how low the warehouse is. And one of the benefits that Amazon see, if you read their books, is they can go and rent a warehouse anywhere. Can be an old manufacturing plant, can be anything, because this doesn't need height or technology. So he needs a reasonably flat floor, and away he goes. He puts in all these shelves. The shelves bring the goods to the picker. It's easy to install. It needs a lot of space, but it does work quite well. There you can see another shot of the robot bringing the goods to this picker. It's actually quite simple when you think about it. Another shot of the Kiva robot. They've gone through these shelves. They're simple. Clearly, they've got to strap some things in. They don't want stuff falling out while the robot's running around. I'm going to show you a short movie. I hope you actually can see it. We've now got 103 people, and I hope that the network is fast enough to show it, but let's try. So the advantage of that system, and here's a manual-based robot system, where these robots bring the goods to the picker. And the big advantage of a robot system like that is, although it's fairly hard automation, it's flexible. Hey, if you screwed up and you didn't get the design right, you can add another 10 robots. And people do screw up and do get designs wrong. Or you you don't have to design for peak. You can add robots when peak arrives, when you get growth, your business grows, your business changes. So here's some robots that bring the order to the pickers and just help the people. So picking is only a small part of the problem. For e-commerce, if you look at an Amazon warehouse, there's as many people packing as they are picking. So it's no use solving your picking problem and you haven't solved your packing problem. Here's an interesting shot of a Amazon packing station, where we got dozens and dozens of people packing. And packaging is probably the most difficult part of any warehouse to automate if you want to. Picking, you can do lots of things. Packing, you can't. And as I said, as many people packing as picking. And we throw stuff in the packages that are not ideal for the environment. Bubble wrap, plastic, whatever it is. It's not a horrible picture. That is some guys on the sea, believe it or not. They're actually floating, and that's plastics that are accumulating. And I was listening to a blog the other day about what the biggest cause of this. And they were saying that it's the Western countries that cause all this shit, because what they do is it's very, very difficult to reuse a lot of the plastics. So what they do is they compact the plastics, and the local environmentalists don't want them to put them in landfill, so they stick them in containers and send them to the third world. The third world get these containers because they can make some money off plastic. And what do? They dump them in the sea. So, you know, it's a bit frightening about what's happening. Nobody wants to put them in landfill, so they do these things, which is worse than putting them in landfill. But anyhow, let's get off the high horse on that. One of the options to help the environment is box sizing. And there's a lot of manufacturers now who make machines that build a box just to the size you want for that order. And that's growing quite nicely. It's still very expensive, but you know, if you really want to save the environment, it's one nice way to do it. And there are machines that can build boxes for almost any shape and size. So it'll build the box around the order. And of course, the auto bags that we're sending out plastic, it's ideal if you want to package small stuff. You just throw it in, it prints the label on the product and off it goes. So your plastic bag, you throw the stuff in it and off it goes with label and everything. Robotic packaging is still a long way to go. We've got robotic everything, but packaging's not quite there yet. Probably get there in another 5 years. And of course, returnable packaging, everybody talks about it. Congratulations, Woolworths, they've actually taken away plastic bags, but their packaging of their products are still 90% in plastic. Here's some courier bags that are returnable. Of course, we finished packaging. Now it all ends up in dispatch. There's a typical dispatch. That's the same TJ Morris, that same company that we saw their picking system. The South African way, we stick them in cages sometimes. It's quite interesting when foreigners come to South Africa, so-called warehouse experts from Europe, and you take them through and you show them cages. They always sort of look at them and ask why. There's an interesting one, which we just done for somebody, whereby they're running out of dispatch staging space. So above the dispatch area, we put live storage at the bottom, mole system or radio shuttle system above, and put all this capacity extra into the dispatch area. So a bit of mechanization, you can do some really clever things. You run out of dispatch space, You know, don't go buy a new warehouse. Here's some technology for you. Or you can store, you could just build a mezzanine as well. But this gives you a lot of storage over dispatch. So you can say, well, some things haven't changed. Docks and doors are still the same. We haven't mechanized those yet. Well, maybe we have. So your dock levelers are exactly how they were. Nothing's changed there. Well, here's an interesting change to your dock. Here's a automated guided vehicle forklift. That's loading trucks, so you don't need to load the trucks. And of course, the dock levelers here are a little different as well. These are vertical units. Quite nice, the vertical units in cold climates or for cold storage areas, because you can close the door properly. Chilled warehousing. Here's a nice warehouse dispatch area with some conveyor feeding in, so that they're staging on conveyor. And there it is on the other side where the guy's picking up 3 pallets at once. So here we're getting efficiency not by automating, by just a little bit of mechanization. And you load 3 pallets at the same time. And he has a fully automated truck loading system where we can put it on conveyor and put a conveyor in the truck, and away we go, and we can automatically load the truck. So is the automation only there to help people? Well, this is at Lowe's. So has anybody gone shopping at Builder's Warehouse? And you walk around confused well, I'm confused a lot of the time, but not most of the time. And I want to know where something is. Well, here at Lowe's, you can rent yourself for free, that is, a robot, and he'll walk with you, and you can ask him, hey, listen, I want poison for aphids. Where do I find it, and which ones do I use? And it'll help you. Hey, I want wood that doesn't rot, or whatever he needs. This robot comes with you on your tour. So our robot's only there to help humans. Here's an example. They're saying they can get a substantial increase in capacity of a Tara truck by driving the Tara truck to the location automatically rather than the driver trying to get there on his own. So equipment has changed. I mean, just look at cell phones. Some of you are my age, you'll remember the very first cell phone and how they developed, you know, and what are they going to be in the future? The world has changed substantially. So let's talk some harder automation, but maybe we should do 5 minutes of questions, and then we'll have a tea break before we talk hard automation. Not quite sure how we do this. Anybody got a burning question they want to ask? Just unmute yourself and ask.
Martin, do the economics of AGVs work in South Africa?
So Salim, not yet. We price them regularly, and they're still 3 to 4 times the price. Don't forget, you've got to pay for the software as well. So they're still at 3 times the price, say, of a normal lift truck. But the software is pretty well paid for most guys. So why? And if you look at an AGV, they're a lot simpler than a forklift. It hasn't got all those. It hasn't got a seat. It hasn't got a steering wheel. It hasn't got all the displays. So in theory, they should be cheaper. And I think the guy that I spoke to makes AGVs, and they also make forklifts. In Germany, his prediction of 3 to 5 years, they'll be the same price. I think it's reasonable to think that that'll happen. I'm going to show you an AGV for sorting just now that actually is cheaper than conveyor. So not yet, but it's coming. And in Europe, when you're paying, I don't know, say 40,000 euros a year salary for a forklift driver, that sort of starts talking pretty loudly. And then if you're running 3 shifts, if you're running 4 shifts, I reckon you can justify AGVs right now in South Africa. If you're running 3 shifts, I think you're close. Running 1 shift, you're still quite far away at the moment. Anybody else? I see we got 104 people, so that's magic. Okay,
Yeah.
let's see.
Martin, there's no questions in the chat at the moment.
Is that everywhere too early in the morning?
Does anybody have any questions before you take your tea and coffee break on this first session?
Hi, Martin, Jonia. Just a quick question. So you mentioned we make use of cages in South Africa more likely compared to outside of South Africa. What does the other countries use in dispatch environments?
I have never seen a cage in Europe, ever, in the dispatch area. Look, what happens normally is we build a warehouse and we don't put in any cages. And then theft starts going up, and the first reaction is, hey, let's put in a cage because we can then do a check and see what's in it and what's outside it. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But maybe Europe, America don't have the levels of theft we have. I haven't been to Russia, who I believe have the same levels of theft that we have in South Africa. Maybe they have cages as well. But outside, I have never, and I've visited maybe well over 100 warehouses, maybe close to 200 warehouses in Europe and the States, and I've never seen a dispatch cage, ever. So yeah, I think if you get your processes right, you probably don't need as many cages. But I don't want to say you never need a cage. Hey guys, you have high levels of theft. It's an immediate reaction and you can't blame them. The first thing they're going to do is put in a cage to separate, because people steal from each other as well as stealing from a company. If you've got 4 couriers, for example, the one courier takes from the other courier or something like that.
Martin? Sorry, I'm sorry. Are you finished with that question?
Yeah.
I just butted in.
Okay, I was waffling away, yeah.
I have another question here. Dark warehouses, are they really as efficient?
Okay, so we for example, let me give you a horrible case study. We built one for Sasol. And for 10 years, it's been efficient. But over time, one can argue that it's not that efficient anymore. So you've got to look at a dark warehouse in terms of it's totally inflexible. So they work well and they can be economical, but I think, and that's true for any automation. When you automate something, you take out flexibility. So as long as you realize that if your business changes, you've got to take the automation and may have to put it in the dustbin. So they can be more efficient, but it can be that they're not. What happens if your pallet changes? What happens if your throughputs change? What happens if your WMS changes? You know, dark warehouses are really good for pallets in, pallets out. And often that's not where the labor is needed. It's often not where the people, where the efficiencies are needed. Some places they are. So that's sort of an answer that doesn't really answer.
It's some insight though. It's a difficult one to give a definitive answer, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so before you go clambering off for your coffee, any last questions? Nothing at the moment. Martin, what time would you like to reconvene?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Okay.
5, 6 minutes to get a drink, cup of coffee. You must be bored of my voice by now, so recover.
Well,
Your
we'll see how
emails.
many drop off and not come back.
So far, only one, according to my thing.
No, we'll see everybody back. So 5 minutes or so, comfort break, coffee break. We'll see you all back here shortly.
Right. Refresh. Shall we move on?
Okay, so we hope they're refreshed and ready to go for section 2. So I think if anybody's got any questions that, you know, really want to address at that point, you can drop them in the chat. Watch out for them and address them with Martin right away so that you can get answer straight away if that's what you're looking for. But anyway, Martin, carry on.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about some harder automation. Where it's going. I mean, automation in warehouse has been around a long time. In the 1970s, they built the first automated storage and retrieval system. And nothing really happened until the sort of 2010s when IoT started and microprocessors started getting really cheap. And we're now getting into the robotics era. We've got to see what AI can really do for us in the 2030s. So the next evolution of automation is probably not that. It's probably something very different. So the real question is, are they going to replace people? For sure. How are they going to replace people is the difficult question. Probably not like this either. They're going to be virtual. So here's a picture of some automated guided vehicles, which run off what they call swarm intelligence. So these AGVs can talk to each other, not just talk. And just look how simple these AGVs. You asked whether that'll replace a forklift. I can't see how it can't replace a forklift. It's just so much simpler than a forklift. And these automated guys are feeding an automated warehouse over here. They can get an instruction while they're driving to say, no, don't feed this warehouse. We're changing our mind. Go straight, or go straight to dispatch, or don't go to the warehouse. Do go to the warehouse. And they run around the warehouse on a free path. They'll optimize. If something gets put in front of them, they'll learn a new route to go around it. I wish Waze, I always use, learns new routes for my car, but these things do learn new routes. And they're quite simple. Don't need drivers. Of course, they come in all shapes and sizes. Here's a turret truck AGV. Turret trucks are easy to automate because they do run on wire guidance. All shapes and sizes again. And there's a reach truck AGV. So you can say, hey, will the reach truck look different? Will it be simpler? I mean, this is a lot simpler than the average reach truck. Interesting, it has a double fork, so it can carry 2 pallets at once. And there's a reach truck putting stuff away in an aisle, just working like any other vehicle without a driver. And here's some at Rotterdam Port, carrying containers around. They don't have trucks at Rotterdam, they have big AGVs. And there's no real limit. Here's a ship they've just built, the Birkenhead. You can read all about it if you really want, which won't have anybody on board and carry containers around the world. So are we heading for an environment where none of us will have jobs? Where will these thousands of people who need jobs get them? Interesting question, although Amazon is probably the biggest employer, the growth of employment in the States. When you look at the growth of employment by Amazon, it's huge. So this is a thing called an A-frame. It can do 60,000 units around per hour, been around 30 years. And here's some really nice hard automation. You stack these things up like a cigarette vending machine, push a button, and out comes the order. So a lot of this is not new. The biggest problem with A-frames is filling it fast enough. Because if this thing runs at 60,000 units an hour, you need a dozen people, which are not shown in these aisles, to fill this thing so that it can work efficiently. So there is picking robots. They're pretty close to experimental. Nobody's quite got them to be financially viable. And they really are just demo things at the moment. But they do exist. Can a robot do it? Probably not viably for a good few years. Most of the picking robots, you bring a case, you pick a case, you bring the case, he takes one out, he's got a vision system so he can tell what's in the case. He puts it on a conveyor and then he puts it in a bin, but still not that efficient. This is SimCorp do a case picking system for the beverage industry using an overhead gantry robot. So robots don't necessarily look like the ones that I showed you with red eyes. This robot picks up a case, so you bring a pallet in, picks it up, and it stacks it to the right. This is an interesting one, same SimCorp, and what they're doing here, if you look at it, is not picking, but staging orders for dispatch. So that's another use of robots, that you can stage the orders, stack them up, do them, something like that. Let's look at transport in the warehouse. I mean, the traditional way was to pull something around with a tractor trailer. Well, things are changing. Here's a little automated guided vehicle carrying a case round and round the warehouse. And we saw that on the video. Monorails, which move, especially if you've got long distances, you can hang a monorail, put pallets on the monorail, and away you go. A lot of monorails, especially if you're feeding from a production line to a warehouse and it's quite a long distance. There you can see another monorail moving beer through a tunnel. And there's AGVs carrying pallets, just another shot from what one would call a dark warehouse. Feeding the AGVs, AGVs take it to some sort of dispatch or picking station. Okay, so now let's move along to some interesting problems that e-commerce has created. And there's some really interesting challenges. You can see that here. This is a really interesting one of what happens in peak season with e-commerce. Where you've got to sort all this stuff. And there are a lot of sorters, Bombay, tilt tray, push arm. I'll show you some sweep arm, cross belt, shoe sorter, pop-up belt, pop-up wheel, long belt, pouch sorters. The pouch sorter is probably this year's in technology. Everybody's trying to push them, especially good in the textile industry, clothing. I went to a site in Germany whereby they pack the cases, not only, it's a shirt manufacturer, they only make shirts, but they pack them not only by color, but by size as well. So you have the small size at the top, the big size at the bottom. And they do that. They spend all that money on a pouch sorter to do that because they reckon that it saves a fortune when it reaches the store, that they can have them by size range packed in the box using pouch sorters. So they throw the shirts in the pouches and away they go. The pouch sorter is really a technology that everybody's pushing at the moment. Shoe sorter. We've done one or two shoe sorters. They're okay. The only problem with shoe sorters is when the boxes aren't square. If you have a round box, sometimes the shoes climb underneath but they're fast. Cross belt sorter. Just doing one now that's 14,000 units an hour. So they're really fast. Cross tray sorter for small items. Also very fast, about 12,000 units an hour, and you can get small stuff sorted. And for a courier especially, sorters like this are quite common. Sorter up there feeds down to a dispatch area. We said, well, that's the technology we all want to use. Again, I'm going to show a movie, hopefully something happens. And let's look at some of the new technology. So what we have here is little robot sorters dumping to various chutes. Manually loaded, nice and simple. And if you haven't got enough capacity, you go buy some more robots. Here's a new robot sorter that somebody's just developed, and they can be various heights. And we've just done some pricing on one of these versus a traditional sorter, and quite interestingly, cheaper than a traditional sorter. But more important, look how much more flexible it is. So there's a cross-belt sortation system on a robot. Whoops. And here's one as well, which is available in America. And the interesting part of this one is that you can rent the system for seasons. And this is for sorting small things from Tompkins Robotics. And these little robots dispatch into bins. I'm going to try and play this. You know what? Okay. Sorry, we get these ads. This is Amazon's robots. But you can see them doing exactly the same thing. Okay, so I have put the websites. You can see a few more of them. And you can see here coming out through the doors, out the door, lots and lots of different options. Let me just briefly talk about automation failure, because I've shown you lots of automation. This was Sainsbury, and today they're really doing well as a company. They're beating Tesco. But at one stage, they decided to fully automate all their distribution centers. And they built several of them, I think 4 or 5 of them, and they put in lots and lots of automation. And what happened is the people who built this facility never understood that they need to pack in store-friendly rolltainers. So they just randomly sent stuff down the thing. Firstly, they couldn't cope with the packing. You can see that. But the biggest issue was because these rolltainers were not packed store-friendly. In other words, you had maybe biscuits mixed with canned peaches, mixed with chocolates, mixed with tomato sauce, mixed with toilet paper, all going to different places. And when they got to the stores had to go and hire people. And they talked about hiring something like 15,000 extra people to repack everything at the stores. Well, they got a lot of stores, but it's an interesting. So sometimes automation, the warehouse may have become more efficient, but the total supply chain became less efficient. Let's move on to another subject. I guess a lot of you as kids had to find Wally. If you've never had a Where's Wally book, you should get some. Well, you can go online and get them these days. But you go through here and you've got to find Wally somewhere in there. And it feels like that sometimes, looking for the product in your warehouse, finding Wally somewhere. Very interesting, he brought out a book called Where's Bin Laden? That's before they found Bin Laden, the American bandit. So, but you can go look on the internet at Where's Bin Laden. He's also, they got a thing like this with Bin Laden hiding. And I'm just trying to illustrate that sometimes in the warehouse, we really struggle to find things. And what we'd love to have is a magic system that waves a wand and says where everything is. How close are we to that? That's interesting, not that close, but it's coming. So this is a Bluetooth system, low energy Bluetooth. And already they're talking about putting this on every single bag. There's guys who sell one that weighs itself, has a power bank, has a Bluetooth speaker, has a proximity sensor, and so on. So if you want something for your luggage, I don't know how all this works, but apparently it's there. But most people still are using barcodes, whether 2D or 3D. In the pharmaceutical industry, they're trying to put in lot serial number tracking. So each set of pills you buy will have a serial number, and you'll have to go back to some place, I think it's in Holland somewhere, whereby you'll check to see whether that serial number is kosher or not kosher. And if it is, you as a pharmacist can actually dispense that. So each unit of pharmaceutical, and this has been implemented already in a lot of countries in Europe, but each unit will have its own serial number, not implemented yet in South Africa. We did bring out RFID, not very successfully. We tried to put it in warehouses. I don't know if many successful implementations of RFID. But the future seems to be low energy Bluetooth, which seem to work. It doesn't have all the problems that RFID has. And everybody tells us that in another 3-4 years, when these get cheap enough, we'll stick these on our cases and we'll be able to wave our magic wand. So Bluetooth low energy beacons are something worth watching out for and seeing when they arrive and how good they are. There are guys who do things like using existing technology to wave that magic wand. You can rent one of these things and put them in your warehouse, and it can go around and take photographs and do a stock take for you. So a drone stock taking machine. So we're hoping that the fully connected warehouse where we might wave that magic wand is not that far away. Would be really nice where we can find Wally wherever he is. Here's an interesting one. This is for pharmaceuticals, and it's being developed especially because of that tracking problem with pharmaceuticals. But you picked your order, put it in the bin gets automatically emptied, runs through a checking machine, comes out the other side. And pharmaceuticals checking is quite important. You don't want to send some guy with heart condition, some Viagra or something like that. So, you know, you want to make sure that you do pick the right order. This is one of those big A-frame machines. You can't really see it clearly, but it is an A-frame. And what we have here is a whole wad of cameras which will photograph every single thing, digitize it, and say, yep, we now know exactly what we sent to the customer. We have a triple check, fully automated check. So maintaining the new warehouse, how are we going to maintain it? We're going to build this warehouse with all these robots. Who's going to look after them? How are we going to look after them? That's an interesting question. So how do we keep this stuff working? Are we going to keep them working? Who's going to maintain them? Who's going to look after them? Or will the robots look after us? I guess that's an interesting debate. And maybe there are some things that aren't worth automating. Certainly, there are some things that definitely aren't worth automating. So there is, this is from some company who provide you with this equipment when you buy their warehouse system, and they link the technician to the system, and the guy who's sitting in Austria in this case can see what the technician is looking at, and they can communicate with him, and he'll tell the technician, hey, if this is not happening, go and do that. So the technician, there's one technician in Austria and one technician here in South Africa trying to maintain the equipment. What I haven't talked about, and maybe we should come back to Earth for a while, is just simple improvements to existing equipment, like batteries. So we have high frequency chargers, high speed charging, which I really don't like. Add some air agitation, automatic filling, automatic monitoring, and we try and make sure that our batteries have a longer life. That's really what we're trying to do. But maybe it's all about lithium ion. I'm yet to be convinced about lithium ion yet. When you're paying 3 to 4 times more for the battery, but that's not my biggest issue with lithium ion. The big one is that when you got 100 forklifts and you all go charge them at lunchtime, and you all go charge them as you go home again, your peak power demand goes through the roof, and nobody talks about that when they sell you a lithium ion battery. You know, they talk about, hey, this thing will last forever, probably longer than your forklift. And it's quick to charge, yes. And if you've got 2 or 3 machines, perfect. And you've got 20 machines, I'm not so sure. And in the future, we're going to have all sorts of batteries coming at us. We're just waiting for some new batteries. Who knows? I took this off the internet. I have no idea what any of these things do. Super capacities, is that the future? Maybe. There's quite a few of them about, and there's some equipment running off super capacitors. At the moment, the density of power is not great. But here's an AGV, and they've just pulled the side off, and you can see the super capacities down here. The nice part is you can charge them instantly. And they like to be induction charged. And I don't know why we don't charge a lot more by induction. And McLaren are also already using super capacitors on their racing cars. Hydrogen, maybe one day. A lot of people seem to hold a lot of hope for it. One of the big problems with hydrogen is that it is extremely flammable. Let's talk, if we're going to talk the future of warehousing, about some building trends. What's going to happen with our warehouses? Hopefully they don't look like that. But that's an interesting one. This is Nike's new warehouse in Belgium. The only way you can tell that it's a warehouse is you can see all the dock levelers here at the bottom. But it certainly doesn't look like a traditional warehouse that we generally think of as a warehouse. So buildings, big spans, bigger the better, high roof, higher the better. We've had rack-supported buildings since the 1970s. Economically viable, cheaper to build, easier to build. Problem is totally inflexible. And going up, as I said, 50 meters high, not uncommon these days. This is a warehouse we did in Dubai, 75,000 pallet freezer. The interesting part about this is we have a water table that's 1 meter down because it's right by the sea. We have 100% humidity at times and 50 degrees outside, and it's the humidity that makes it so difficult. But yeah, bigger the better. This thing is massive. 75,000 pallet freezer. There's various technologies. There isn't one technology in there. Each chamber has different technologies. Building faster. We build 90% of warehouses using tilt-up construction these days. And a nice place to work. This is a Disney warehouse, but you can do this in any warehouse for very little cost. And there's a nice plant room. Why not? Why does it have to be all the same old colors and the same old? So we could make places a happy place to live. And of course, with the changing world and COVID and that, a lot more people, my staff mainly these days are working from home. Some green stuff that we talk about in the warehouses. Clearly, PV solar's the one that's quite easy to implement. Biggest problem is we can't put back in the grid, but we can use a lot of it during the day. And there's a nice one we can see on top of the parking lot or on top of the warehouse. LED lighting these days are addressable if you want it to be addressable with a passive infrared to switch it on and off. Although once you get above about 14 meters, they don't work so good. The passive infrared, that is. The LEDs work fine. Just watch, if you're doing LEDs, that you get the colors right. You can get some really horrible colors if you on your LEDs. Prismatic domes. A lot of warehouses in the States use prismatic domes, and they use these as burnout panels. So instead of roof vents, they put these in and they melt if there's a fire. I don't think the South African authorities would like that. Then let's move on to transport. I mean, transport is 60% of all our costs in most supply chains. So what are we doing? Yeah, sure, better trucks. Double-decker stacking, that comes with our, if you can get double-decker, you get so much more on the truck. And there's a lot of guys now who have some sort of racking system on the truck. Like that. And you can see how low these guys are to the ground to try and get more capacity. Door at the back, door on the side. So you can do almost anything highly flexible. And maybe move, preload. You can load your order, put it in a body and move the truck body wherever you want it to go. And of course, they're getting longer. In Europe now, the Euro combi is becoming quite common. It's not allowed in all states, all countries, but most countries have now adopted it. 25.25 meters long, very tight thing. So when it goes around the corner, it actually gets to be longer than 25 meters. It's very, very difficult to reverse because it's got an extra pivot point to our linked, but got quite a lot of extra capacity. There you can see a rear and side road Euro combi. And of course, electric trucks, we think may become one of these days. Any questions so far before I move on to warehouse management systems and their trends there? Any comments so far? Still got everybody here. I don't know if anybody's listening, but there is still the same 100 people. Okay, let me move on. If you can hear snoring in the background, it's my daughter's French bulldog. So what's happening with warehouse management systems? Well, clearly SAP is probably the biggest growth. They launched their EWM system, extended warehouse management, and they have it now for HANA and for most, and they're pushing it. They've sort of replaced WM. And I put on the right all the warehouse managed system suppliers, and you can see how much bigger SAP is compared to Oracle, JDA, and all the rest. So they dominate this industry worldwide. So, you know, you got to ask, well, why aren't you on SAP? And the EWM system's quite good. It's quite rich in functionality. I'd hate to tell you what it costs to install. We've done a few and it's not easy, but it really does work well. On the warehouse control system and the manufacturing execution systems, a lot of the big suppliers who like Knapp and Schaefer, who were in that business, has moved up and now sell warehouse management systems. And then SAP, who always sold warehouse management, Manhattan, who always sold warehouse management systems, has moved down and now offer hard automation. You can actually automate your whole plant on SAP. So SAP have their manufacturing execution system. They haven't yet got to sell process controllers. I wouldn't surprise me if they started one of these days. So they're not yet into hardware, but they're all moving down. And the guys who were down here, like Knapp and Schaefer in our business, have moved up, right up, even selling a type of ERP system. So whoever they are, they want world domination. They certainly don't want somebody else playing in their cabbage patch. Of course, SCADA systems have developed nicely over the last few years. Nothing new, but they're getting better and much more sophisticated. You can't put in a decent automated system without a good SCADA system. The two go hand in hand. Otherwise, you'll never know what's gone wrong. And the future of your warehouse, if it's automated, is maybe a guy walking around with your SCADA system. Then we move on to something brand new, which is starting, is the next generation of warehouse management system apps. And it might be that it is. There's a whole lot of apps available to run your warehouse. And here's Saps Mobile Inventory Manager. It's certainly advertised. I have asked Saps for more detail on it, and they won't give it to me, which makes me think that it might still be virtual. And they're still developing it, but this is it. So you run MM or WM, whatever you want, and you get a couple of cell phones, and you can do everything you want on your cell phone. Stock control, goods receipt, scanning, anything you like. And is this the future where each guy in your warehouse will be issued with a cell phone, and he'll run all the apps that he needs? Everything he needs to do will be run on an app. Maybe it is. I mean, these guys claim they do goods receipt, issue, transfers, stock taking, everything on a cell phone. Straight out of HANA, SAP HANA. Let's move on a bit. So that's an interesting challenge. Is AI the real game changer? Is it going to be the stuff that forecasting? Because we've never got forecasting to work, that's for sure. There ain't any really good forecasting systems. So is AI going to be the game changer for forecasting, decision-making, optimization? I like this graph because it does say something about AI. So here we've got intelligence against time, and we've got AI, and we're saying, well, at the moment, AI is probably a little bit sort of at the intelligence of a cockroach. And over time, it'll get to the intelligence of a bird. And very quickly, it's going to get to the intelligence of a dumb human. And then after that, a few days later, it'll get to the intelligence of Einstein. And at this point, I've written ish. I'm not quite sure where we go from there. And here's two different opinions on artificial intelligence. Jeff Bezos, I predict that because of artificial intelligence and its ability to automate certain tasks that in the past were impossible to automate, not only will we have a much wealthier civilization, but the quality of work will go up significantly, and a higher fraction of people will have callings and careers. I'm sure his PR department wrote that for him. And Elon Musk, who says things in much shorter sense, says, mark my words, AI is far more dangerous than nukes. Okay, take your choice. Elon Musk is into this whole thing where he wants to use artificial intelligence to enhance humans. So he wants to stick a chip in your brain. He's already doing research on pigs, I believe, that he has put chips in their brains and running artificial intelligence from your brain using chips in your brain. I guess I don't want a chip in my brain, but then maybe there are people. And he often says that more intelligent you are is what equipment you've got in front of you. You've got access to Google, you have a greater knowledge than a guy who doesn't. And we often hear it referred to as machine learning. So AI, nice way of not calling it AI and getting people frightened, is to call it machine learning. And there's a lot of it. Hey, listen, if they can eliminate all accountants in a couple of years and no more auditors with machine learning, and I have two friends who are working on AI to remove, or as they call it, machine learning, to remove accountants from your life. So we're welcoming you to the warehouse of the future. Perhaps the ultimate supply chain is different to what we envisage. Maybe We're just going to print whatever we want, and we won't need a supply chain at all. We'll just issue you with, the supply chain will be limited to the materials that go into your 3D printer. And that'll be the supply chain of the future. And you can make anything. You can print literally anything. I saw that in America, they're trying to stop people printing guns. I don't know how you're going to do that. But you can literally print a machine gun if you really want one. And I don't know how genuine this picture is. I downloaded it off the web. But can you print a hamburger? I don't know. In science fiction, you can, and maybe in 5 years' time, or maybe you can now. I don't know. I assume this is a setup. But hey, if we can print food, can you imagine how that'll change the world? So welcome to your future. Welcome to the world of warehousing. Hopefully you like it. I think it's not the strongest of the species that survive, not the most intelligent. It is the one that's most adaptable to change. Guys, I know I finished a lot faster than I should have, but I'd like to do lots of questions now. Have we got any nice, interesting questions?
We have a question here. Any alternative solution to pallet wrap, slip sheets, and angle board usage for transportation of pallets? Stability, wastage, and increase in cost is often an issue.
Any alternative to slip sheets?
Pallet wrap, slip sheets, and angle boards.
Yeah, so there's not a lot of guys who use slip sheets anymore. When I started in this business, I hate to tell you how many years ago, slip sheets were really, really popular. Today, not sure I see 1 out of 100 warehouses using slip sheets. Alternative, use a pallet, a disposable pallet. Not sure there are any other options. Pallet, slip sheet, not that I know of. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, there's comments, but there's not questions.
Read some.
Yeah, there's lots of comments. Oh, here we
Find
go.
the bad ones and read them.
Will it be difficult for warehouses to introduce full automation in South Africa due to our labor laws?
So the answer is not due. I don't believe there's any restriction in putting in automation other than the moral obligation to try and employ as many people as possible. And that moral obligation gets chucked out the moment you have a strike. We've got a couple of customers who've had some heavy strikes, and that moral fortitude about employing lots of people suddenly disappears in a huge hurry. I don't think there's any legislation that stops anybody automating anything. There might be labor unions that stop, especially AGVs, because an AGV you can see is replacing a person. You know, some of the other harder automation, like an automated warehouse, and if you move to a new site, clearly it's not an issue. But within an existing site, their labor might object to it. But there's no legislation that says you can't put in anything you like. It's your business. Whether it's clever to do it, that's another debate.
Okay, so here we go. Thanks for the questions, guys. Keep them coming. Okay, what would you consider the elements of an automation business case in the South African context, since labor optimization isn't sufficient?
So yeah, So the first, as he says, the first step is to look at labor optimization. Hey, can I optimize my people? Well, no, hang on. Let me take a step back. There are some areas of automation that you have no option. Let's say you're a courier and you suddenly now need to do 10,000 parcels an hour. There is no way you're going to do that with humans. I don't care if you have 500 humans doing the job. You just can't do it. You get to a point where physically it's a groot gemors if you try and do it with humans. Okay, so you have to automate. Okay, so that's an easy justification. Hey, we can't get the stuff out the door. We need to mechanize. Let's call it mechanize. If it's a direct comparison, we're going to use, let's take the AGVs example. Okay, we've got a direct comparison. It's going to cost us $1 million an AGV, and it's going to cost us 400,000 for a reach truck. Okay. How do you justify that? Well, hang on. On a single shift, it's clear you're not going to justify it. On a double shift, you're going to struggle. You're running 3 or 4 shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Suddenly, the justification is quite easy. It's a labor cost versus a saving. You do need to add some maintenance costs for the automation. And that's something we sometimes forget about. Can be quite high. But we've got maintenance costs for forklifts as well. So, you know, if it's really just putting all the costs you can think of into a great big cash flow and doing the numbers, doing and seeing if at the end of the day. But sometimes it's also about, as I say, just getting the stuff out the door. You know, how do you do it? And some things are a lot easier to automate. In the textile industry, automation is a lot easier when you've got a lot of SKUs and they're fairly small and light.
But for now, we still need people to some degree.
Yeah, you never get away with all the people. You know, hard automation, as I called it, is really tough to get away with. If not nothing else, you need people to maintain the system. You know, and those people cost a lot more than the guys who do the work. Maybe not in Germany or Finland, but there are places like in freezer boxes. You know, in Europe, if you got a guy in a freezer working in those environments, he'll end up earning as much as the MD, because he gets all sorts of danger pay for working in a freezer box. Not so much in South Africa.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
If he picks up loads more than a certain weight in Europe, he gets an extra danger pay. Anything over 30 kilos.
Okay, so they don't do that here in South Africa.
No.
I think people would be walking around with 120 kilos if that's the case. There's a way to earn some extra money. That's actually bizarre, but anyway. Okay, so I have some more questions for you here around the workforce. How skilled would the workforce of the future have to be to manage the automation, or will it be AI only?
That's interesting. Yeah. So do we need more skill or less skill to manage automation? I think probably less skill. Managing people is difficult because they're unpredictable. They don't always do what you think they're going to do. Hopefully managing automation, it does the same thing over and over in an exactly predictable manner. So maintaining it, different kettle of fish. Managing it, I think, easy.
Okay. Liesel, does that answer your question? Okay, so next one, what would your suggestion be on inventory management systems, suggestion of systems and cost involved, etc., and what is your opinion on DDMRP?
Yeah, no, clearly DDMRP simplifies the whole process. I'm not an expert on it. You need to ask a whole lot of your Saps experts on DDMRP. But in terms of inventory, everything to me is about forecasting. Okay, if you can get your forecasting right, I know there's a whole lot of systems they say don't need forecasting, but I'm still a great believer in having good forecasting. And we've never really managed to get forecasting accurate. So the panacea out there is Will, and ask Liesel, she's the expert, not me, in all of this. Will artificial intelligence create forecasting packages that can predict? And if you can predict, clearly your inventory is going to be so much more accurate.
Okay. So I'm going to make a call out here. I'm sure that a lot of you do know about DDMRP, but in case some of you don't, I'm going to pick on Ken. Just come on and just share a few words about DDMRP in the context of the discussion that we're having now, if you don't mind, Ken, and you are still there and it's not just your face.
Yeah, no, I'm here. Hello.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, DDMRP is definitely the way to go. Look, forecasting is not going to get any better, even if you put in, and people have tried machine learning and AI and what have you, but it just isn't going to get you to where you need to be with regards to forecast accuracy. However, DDMRP, it works on actual demand, and actual demand is virtually 100% accurate. We're working on customer orders, and they're virtually 100% accurate, and we're pulling materials down the supply chain. So there are hundreds of case studies in thousands of factories and warehouses around the world on 6 continents. Sorry, proving that this is definitely the way to go. And interestingly enough, in the software I'm involved in, they are now applying machine learning and artificial intelligence initially in the concept of buffer sizing, trying to get the buffer sizing a lot easier for people to do rather than sort of thumb sucking and think, oh, this should be that buffer profile or this should be that buffer profile. We're trying to put some machine learning and artificial intelligence into that particular aspect. And I think that's just going to go on and on, because ultimately your supply chain should work like an aircraft. It should be on automatic for 90% of the time, and you only need to sort of go and apply your mind to the odd occasion where things are not just working as they should be. And I think that's the objective at the end of the day. And a lot of people also now in DDMRP put automatic replenishment on. They don't even go and look at the planned orders that are coming out of DDMRP because they know it works. They just want to put it on automatic and just look at those items that really need their attention. But now the planners can spend their time looking at the more important things in your business, and that's continuous improvement of your supply chain, rather than trying to work out what it is they should be buying or what, and when they should be buying it. So this is the way to go. And if you want to know more, talk to me later.
Thank you, Ken. You can see Ken is very passionate about this particular topic.
Yes.
I would love to compare Liesel's thoughts on that. Is she still here?
Liesel, are you still here?
Don't muddle Liesel de Vet and Liesel Smith.
No, Liesel Smith, I assumed you talked to.
Yeah,
Oh,
I didn't see Liesel here. But Liesel's also a DDMRP convert, isn't she, Ken?
No. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
She is one of the instructors that we've got. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting, it can be an interesting debate, forecasting and demand driven. But I think there is a place for both. The forecasting is your longer range and your demand driven is your kind of immediate.
Sure, if you're talking about next year's fashion, for that's a different ball game to a production plant.
Yep.
Yeah, look, don't throw your forecasting and demand management system out the window, because even in demand-driven MRP, in the bigger picture, the demand-driven adaptive enterprise, we still need to look into the future. We still need to have a reasonable idea of where this business is going in the future. So you still need a reasonably good forecasting and the consensus demand management process. So what we do is we take the operating model, which is being driven on your actual demand, and then project that into the future using your demand management system to see where you might have problems or with regards to capacity or whatever that you might be looking at. So in fact, if you don't have a good forecasting and demand management system and you would put in DDMRP, I'm going to be getting you to put in a good forecasting and demand management system as well. So you need both. You absolutely need both, but you don't use your forecasting system to drive your day-to-day. What am I going to buy? What am I going to make? What am I going to ship? You're using actual demand to do that.
Okay, Ken, thank
Great.
you.
Anything else on warehousing?
Sorry, we got off the topic there, Martin. Sorry about that.
No, but it's a good topic to get on to.
Okay, Ken, back in your box now.
Okay, bye.
Okay, so the costs are still restrictive on automation in South Africa in the supply chain, and our maturity is lagging behind the developed world. Do you see this as a risk to the South African economy? As we can't be competitive on costs, we are landing some cheaper goods. We are landing some goods cheaper than we can make them. I mean, that's very true.
Yeah. So it is. And let me add to our growth problem in South Africa is 60%, 65% of our economy is in Gauteng. And Gauteng's far from any port. And we have a broken link in terms of rail and a broken port in terms of port efficiency. Mm-hmm. So we have compounded on top of compounded. I mean, anything we do in Gauteng is going to be more expensive than somebody's doing on the coast in terms of export and import. And then on top of that, yes. So, yeah, there's not always about automation. I mean, if you can do it cheaper manually, do it. But it is quite difficult to justify. In a lot of places in the world, China included, there are quite big incentives to opening a brand new mechanized factory. Let me call it mechanized. We don't have those incentives. But there are times where you don't have a choice. My courier example, I mean, you just can't compete. I guess you could decentralize, so that's an alternative. Instead of having one courier point, you have 12 courier points, and they each do a 12th of the business. So nothing is simple in South Africa. Labor is not simple. Government policy is not simple. Transnet is not simple. Transport is not simple. We live in a really complex environment. I'd love to live in an environment like America where government interferes very little in anything. But we don't live in that environment in South Africa.
Unfortunately not. Our challenges are real.
Yeah, and who knows what that number is, but it's probably close to 50% unemployment. I mean, it's really tough to say I'm going to automate something. But as he said, if you don't, you may find that you can buy it out of China at half the price.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things in the warehousing business is racking. It's gone through the roof because they've screwed up the pricing has just gone mad for steel. I thought that the shortage would go away once the prices went up. The prices have gone up and shortage hasn't gone, and therefore we may find more price increase before there's plentiful supply. But what it'll do is eventually put the local guys out of business. So nothing, as I say, is simple. The local steel manufacturers, if they keep putting the price up, people will import the steel, or they'll import the racking.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
and that's
there's-
only a
there's
small
really-
item. You know, we're building a new house at the moment. I'm looking at actually doing concrete beams on the roof because the price of steel's gone up so high.
Yeah, we've got lots of things stacked against us, I think.
Yep.
Lots of things stacked against us, but I think we need to try and remain optimistic and positive, and you know, as supply
There's a
chain
lot
professionals.
going for us as well.
No, absolutely. No,
Best
absolutely.
weather
You
in the
know,
world.
that wasn't what I was going for. But there are really, really good success stories of business innovation,
Sure.
technological advancements. There's some really good stuff here, and we need to look at that, you know, and say we can do this. What else can we do? So, you know, there's that as well. Okay, another question for you regarding skills. What skills are needed for future operations?
Yeah, now you get into my pet hate. You know, and I talk about it quite sadly. I still do a bit of lecturing at some of the universities, and I was at a university the other day, and it was a BCom honors student, and there's a shitload of them. There must be 30 or 40 in the class. And I was chatting to the lecturer, and I said, how many of these are going to get a job? She said, she reckons 30%.
Okay.
The other interesting thing is when I came back from the lecture, I got how many emails from people saying, we'll come work for you for nothing, just to get some experience so we can go get a job. So we want you to employ us and not pay us, which is illegal, unfortunately. So, you know, the entire training system, and this is not just South Africa, this is a worldwide problem, is focused about lawyers and accountants and people who want to do social. They're going to do a BCom in socio and psycho. You go to university, you go to a sociology class, there are 200 people in the class. And in engineering, some of the engineering classes, you get 10 of them. So our whole education system is up to pauper. And this is not a South African problem. This is a worldwide problem, is up to pauper. We're not training people for the future skills they need. We're training, I mean, who on earth is ever going to hire these thousands of sociology students? Quite honestly, who's going to hire all these lawyers and accountants? So we want everybody to go to university. It's a disease. They have to go to university, otherwise they're not getting educated. And we should be sending them to technical places where they learn about how to maintain equipment. They learn about process controllers, and they learn about automation, and they learn about to get skills for the world of the future. IT programming, you know, process logic controllers, all of those good things.
Yeah.
Anyhow, let me not carry on my high horse about it.
No, I mean, that's a topic that's very close to my heart. And I mean, if I get on my hobby horse, we'll be here all day. But you're spot on. And there's a lot of things that need to change with regards to that. But that's going to be a slow process because our education system is like it is. But
it's worldwide, eh? Other than Germany, maybe Poland. It's like that everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
It's
but
not
we need
unique
to do what we can change it. We need to do what we can change it. So yeah, that's one of the things that SAPIX is getting behind is kind of like educating or trying to educate the education system, to educate Council of Higher Education, those type of institutions that can change the way that the learning happens, the syllabuses are structured and that type of thing. But that's a very slow process, but we can only but try. So any other questions? Any other questions at all coming through? I've seen comments here that because your presentation was so comprehensive, there are no questions. So that's a good thing. So if there aren't any more questions, I think that we will we'll look at wrapping up. The session has been recorded. Anybody that has missed it or would like a copy, if you've got colleagues that missed it or you'd like to get a copy of it, just to recap, that is available. Again, Martin, I want to thank you for your time in doing this for SAPIX. And obviously, I want to give another shout out to our sponsors for today: EIE, Harmonic, Goscor, Stabalode, and Universal. So at the beginning, when I called everybody out, only Goscor were here. So if any of the other sponsors want to pop on and say a few words, please do.
And maybe
Pop up
I
your
can
hand.
mention EIE. We know them mainly for Toyota forklift.
Yes.
They do some other stuff, but BT and Toyota is their main business. Goscor,
Okay.
Crown forklifts, and some others. Harmonic, you'll know, they do this QB scan is probably what they're best known for, but they do other stuff like RFID and so on. Stabalode dock levelers and doors of every shape and size, and they make them locally as well. And Universal racking. They've been making racking since I was a little boy.
Yeah, Universal have been around for a very, 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 very long time. I think as long as I've been involved with SAPIX, and that's also quite a long time, sadly. Also, this will be available on YouTube, so that you can all access it there. If anybody's got any questions about any of the products and services that any of the sponsors offer, what we'll do is include a link to a contact person, email, whatever the case is. You can contact them directly. And of course, if there's anything that you want to learn more about, hear more about in terms of topics within the supply chain scope, please let us know. We want to hear from our people, our community, and know what it is that they want to talk about, learn about, and hear about. So thank you for spending your time with us this morning. I hope that you've had some really good insights, and that you've learned something that you can take away with you today, that can add value to you and your development, obviously, that you can take away to your business and improve some things there. So we will leave it there. Martin, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. Thank you once again for our sponsors, and we will see you at the next SAPIX event.
One more question in the
Yes.
chat.
Oh, here? Where are we? We are having an issue with our people getting to scan. What other options are there or ways to improve it?
Okay, I can answer that. So it depends what warehouse management system you're running. One of the ways is to put random digits instead of scanning. We do that quite often. So you put a random digit next to each location. Could be PQ, RS, or ABC, or something, or whatever you want. Could be numbers, and make them into the random digit. Brian, people aren't scanning. It could be the RF network is not working. That's just a matter of getting the IT guys to fix the RF and putting more. Might be the frequency the RF system's working on. It might be not enough RF access points. So it could be just about anything that. But if it's just they're not disciplined and not scanning, I guess there's nothing you can do other than fire them if they don't scan. You know, I'm not sure, you know, what the problem is. If the problem is the scanners on scanning, that's a technical problem. Relatively easy to fix. Operational problem, not so easy to fix.
Yeah, I think it's probably an operational problem. In which case, yeah, I don't know, that comes down to kind of KPIs and performance and things like that. So, or like Martin says, just fire them. That's also an
But
option.
you know who the person was, because when he logs onto his terminal, you have actually information on that person. You know that it's Joe who's got that scanner at that time and moved that pallet.
Okay, well, there we go.
If you've
That
got a
narrows it
decent
down.
system.
Okay, so I am now officially going to close. If anybody has any other questions that you think about after the session that you should have asked, that you'd like an answer to, please, we'll share Martin's details. Feel free to harass him for answers with any questions that you have.
Email anytime. I tend not to answer my phone, but I do answer my email.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And goodbye to everybody. We'll see you in the next session, and the questions are now closed.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.